I just wanted the pain to go away. I was on the beach and I was crying my eyes out and I was hungover. He was the one that was on the phone talking me out of it. It was a mixture of lightness and a serious conversation as well. I was in so much pain every day that I just couldn't deal with it.
You could have a vivid reminder of an emotion that is long gone, but it's kind of boiling at the surface in your system. Going through all of those stages in becoming the person that you are in the end have an impact on how your brain develops.
What more could we be doing to understand how certain groups are disproportionately impacted when it comes to mental health and suicide risk?
We need to work on awareness, first of all, and we need to think about that as a method that is rich and colorful, as opposed to just think of ADHD, autism, intersections between that and being gay or trans or whatever it might be, as weeds that need to be eradicated or not as valuable as a proper plant with a flower.
I've always been passionate about my career as well, and I feel like at that moment it was going nowhere. I was going to end up in prison or dead. It got to that point.
How much a role humor plays in healing and in actually just chilling your nervous system so it becomes more resilient. When somebody makes you laugh, it takes the drama out of a situation.
Humour saved me in my darkest moments because depression drains the life from your soul. When you see something funny, it just puts the light back in.
There's no cookie cutter right or wrong way of doing things, and if we apply it to neurodiversity, the neurotypical way of doing things is no better than a neurodivergent way of doing things.
I've been quite open in my life and what I've experienced. I've done that to try and help people, to make people not feel as alone. I got a message from a guy who'd seen it and was like, "You stopped me from taking my own life today."
It's my belief that too many societal problems persist because we keep relying on the same ways of thinking. Question the Default exists to challenge the norms that shape our society, dismantling the status quo and exploring better alternatives for how we live and manage our health and well-being. Question the Default is for those who are driven to create a better future. If this mission resonates with you, please consider subscribing, liking or sharing. Every single small action helps us on our mission. Thank you. One is a writer and performer who turned his darkest moment into a one-man show. The other is a neuroscientist and mental health expert with his own lived experience of neurodivergence. Together, Mark Newsome and Dr Miguel Toribio-Mateas dismantle the stigma surrounding sexuality, suicide, and the science of the mind. In this episode, we dive into their personal stories, how identity shapes mental health, and why human connection is the most underrated tool for survival. Welcome, Question the Default, Dr Miguel. Mark, how are you?
Good, thank you. How are you?
All right, thank you very much. Easy journey down for you today?
Oh, it's a bit stressful, but you know.
A bit stressful.
Yeah, coming from Manchester. There's always a few issues along the way.
Trains, eh? Yeah. Dr Miguel, yourself?
I'm good, thank you.
You're doing well?
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's an honour to have you both on. It's a different format for us again today. We're trying to kind of change our system in terms of how we get different voices on the show. And part of that is to actually combine different stories and different levels of expertise and inputs to similar topics. And yeah, very honoured for you both to make such an effort to be on. So thank you. Mark, I want to come to you first. I've read your kind of story online and kind of read the numerous ways in which you've tried to bring your story to the masses in the hope that it will help others. And Blackpool, What a Place to Die is a one-man show you created based on your life, with the main character Billy, from what I read, described as a young, gay, depressed, autistic man on the brink in Blackpool, and essentially as a version of yourself at your lowest. Is that fair? And can you take us back to where did all this start?
Yeah, that is fair. Yeah, so I did that show initially in 2018. So the event in Blackpool happened in 2017. So it was only like a year after that we actually presented the show in Manchester for the first time. So it was still really raw. The way that it came about was a writer had seen me in a show in Manchester, and he wanted to write me a one-man show. And I said, yeah, it sounds good. He said, have you got anything interesting that you'd like to talk about? And I said, well, yeah. So I have quite an interesting journey where I've been in my life and what's took me to this point. And we started chatting and stuff like that. And then over time, we sort of got a script together. And then we premiered it in Manchester. It went down a storm. And it sort of took off from there, really. But I'd always felt different. I'd always felt like I was weird, like I didn't fit in at school. I'd dread break times because I'd always be on my own. And I'd hate that, you know, because I felt so isolated and like people didn't like me. I've always felt like an outsider and a little bit like on the cusp of things. But I'd always had that love for drama and for acting. And when I was 15, I started at Oldham Theatre Workshop, which was amazing because it completely gave me the confidence to be myself. And there was an amazing person there, Sarah Nelson, who championed me and saw something in me and was like, you need to go off because you've got something about you. You need to go off to drama school. So I tried for drama schools about 2 or 3 years, didn't get in, but eventually got into one, Royal Welsh College, and went there for 3 years, which was brilliant. And then at the end of that, I sort of left with a really good London agent, but it didn't quite work out because my mental health was declining. I was coming to terms with being gay and autistic, and I had like serious addiction problems. And that sort of led me down a dark path for a few years, where I felt completely, you know, off the rails. And I was getting into trouble with the police and stuff like that. And, you know, my life was just not going in the direction that I wanted it to go. And I felt completely hopeless. And that's what led me to go to Blackpool, because it was during a family barbecue. My granddad wasn't well and he was ill. He was dying of cancer. And it was quite a tricky time for the family. And it sort of exploded at a family barbecue. And then that's what led me to go to Blackpool, was because we all had a massive row. And I'd reached the end of my tether because I'd be going out sort of, you know, I was struggling to come to terms with my sexuality, and I'd be going out on my own and wanting to just escape it all, and, you know, getting kicked out of clubs and, you know, just feeling so insecure about myself, really weird and ugly, and, you know, like nobody liked me. So it was a shit time. Yeah.
It's an incredible journey, and thank you for, you know, coming and sharing that. And the family barbecue, you said that was the moment you everything just kind of went in a different direction for you at that point.
Yeah, that was when it exploded. Yeah, because I wasn't coping very well. I was going out drinking, using drugs, getting myself into dangerous, dodgy situations, and it was that moment at the barbecue when I think my mum and dad were worried about me. Obviously, they always said to me, you know, I'm worried that you're going to wake up in a ditch. It got quite heavy. And then I just wanted to escape everything. I just wanted to get out, and, you know, because my career wasn't going where I wanted it to be. And, you know, even though I had a lot of people that believed in me, I didn't, I felt completely hopeless at that moment.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it's the line in the Blackpool Watch Space today, there's humour in it, right? And I think it's, you know, when you actually dig a bit deeper into that, the real story, and you are the real human, you know, behind that. And how do you make sense of you getting into that place where you thought that suicide could have been a very viable option for you?
Because I just wanted the pain to go away. You know, I was in so much pain every day that I just couldn't deal with it. I think with the autism as well, it just heightened everything. And what I've come to realise about my emotions is that I don't regulate them very well. So it just, which is useful for acting and stuff like that, because I can really delve into a character. I can really experience those emotions when I need to do. Yeah. But in my day-to-day life, it's not that helpful. So I just felt like if I was no longer here, then the pain would go away, and everyone would be much happier. You know, that's how I felt at the time.
Yeah, I can say it's not easy to talk about. So
It's quite difficult. Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a breather. I'm going to give you time to compose. I know you've had a very, very busy journey getting down here, but I'm going to come back to some really important points in your story, which I feel lucky to know about them, and so I've not missed those points. but it feels like a suitable time to come to Dr. Miguel, clinical neuroscientist. Very fancy title.
A bit.
But you're a clinical neuroscientist, but also an autistic ADHD. Is that fair?
That's right. Yeah.
So you spent, a long period of your career researching, some of the areas that Mark has shared about today, but you also have been impacted by suicide. Would you like to kind of share a few words on how you make sense of your loss by suicide, and also perhaps what Mark shared?
Yeah, so I lost my best friend to suicide back in the 90s, probably 97. And I was not expecting that at all. But it's even today, this hardly a day that I don't think about him. So it's loss is a funny thing. It goes in waves. Sometimes you kind of like think that you're over it, and then you're not. And it's kind of it leaves an imprint in your nervous system in a way. And then when you, like Mark was saying, when you're autistic and potentially ADHD as well, either or both, emotions are heightened, and sometimes they don't have this kind of like same timeline as for a neurotypical person.
Okay.
So you could have a vivid reminder of an emotion that is long gone, but it's kind of boiling under the surface in your system. So yeah.
How did you get to a place of, and thank you for sharing your loss as well. I know you say it's not easy thing to share about and always on your mind, but how did you end up falling into the place of researching to the extent that you do around mental health and neurodiversity?
So it goes back to, I started studying nutrition back like over 20 years ago. And there came a point that I was so interested in the brain that I decided to go back to university and study neuroscience for different reasons. So different people that I knew with mental health conditions that were in my life. I also have somebody quite close to me who was diagnosed with Parkinson's initially, and then another neurodegenerative condition later on, quite early in life, so in his 40s. And I thought I need to learn more about these conditions and how they affect the brain, but not just the brain, but the whole of the body as well. Because I think that when we talk about neuroscience, we tend to think immediately neurotransmitters, brain, cognitive things, thinking, and the nervous system is part of, the brain is part of the nervous system, and the nervous system is throughout the body, and we feel a lot of things through the body as well. These butterflies in the stomach that we get, and almost these alerts that we get from the nervous system in different situations are part of how the brain is telling us about different phenomena around us. So I think that's what led me to go back to college, and then I did my doctoral degree on the connection between the gut and the brain, just trying to put together nutrition, a bit of microbiology, which I had been working on for a few years, and mental health, kind of all blended into one.
Just a small amount of things there. But no, it is fascinating. And you got me thinking about something different around this kind of, perhaps the public's perception on neuroscience is different to actually what you perhaps think is really important, which is actually our body kind of shows us a lot about what we need to know. And you talked around the kind of butterflies feeling. Are there other ones that you kind of think that perhaps people bypass in their day-to-day when it comes to how our body shows us signs of our mental health?
Well, the benefits of exercise, physical activity that are really well known now for mental health. I think particularly after COVID, people started realizing how important it was to be active and to be out in nature. And it stopped being something that it was nice to do and something that became part of people's lives. And nature, for example, has got a very palpable effect on mental well-being. It can reduce the risk of depression, anxiety. You don't need to have a condition that has been diagnosed. It can just improve your mental well-being anyway. And again, it's kind of like going back to the body and valuing what the body is telling you. Like, for example, if you want to just have a single instance of what might be going on. When you're doing exercise, your gut bacteria actually change. So that's one of the reasons why your mental well-being might actually improve through this gut-brain connection, gut-brain axis that people talk about. So when you're moving more, when you're more active, or when you do aerobic exercise, for example, you go running or jogging or just walking in a field, you get the benefits through the changes in the gut. So going back to these butterflies in the stomach, so your gut might be sending signals to the rest of your body and to the brain that some of them you might pick up on because they might make you feel in a certain way, nervous, jittery, calm. Some may be sub-perceptual, so you don't really feel them, but they are still there. There are signals that are being communicated between the gut and the brain all the time. So yeah, I think it's important to just think of neuroscience not just as a science of the brain, but as a science of the whole body that has, of course, the brain, but also the nervous system that goes all the way to the tips of your fingers and your toes.
But who's the Dr. Miguel that sits behind all of this? Who are you? How did you end up in this space? I get that. I understand the mental health side of things, but who are you?
Who am I?
We need to know.
Right. Well, I guess labels are important because, they allow you to define yourself. Well, I was late diagnosed autistic and ADHD. I was born gay, I guess, kind of like queer. And all of those aspects are important parts of my identity. And I think those labels or those parts of your identity, whether you use them as labels or not, have an impact on how you develop, how your nervous system develops, how your brain develops, because you have a set of values and beliefs and things that are important to you that might be different to other people. And you experience rejection, like Mark was saying about, breaks and not, being like Billy no mates, in school. Well, I was like that as well. I was kind of like the weird one. I was like the camp boy that, was a bit geeky and, so I didn't blend with the boys who wanted to play football or, my dad tried to get me into football and he told me that the thing that I knew that was closest to a football was a square of chocolate. So, because I was just not interested in football at all. But also I felt like rejected by these football guys because they were all kind of macho and, and that was an expression of masculinity that was not in me. I think I was telling you before the podcast as well that I haven't got this concept of masculine and feminine in my brain. It kind of like doesn't compute. It's like I am me. So when I was a teenager, I actually wore makeup and I had like, nail varnish and eyeliner, and like my hair was like pink one day and the next day was red. And, my mom was like completely getting aggy with me every day about how many towels I was destroying. If you're going to do your hair, can you actually let me know before you go into the bathroom and come out with a different hair color so I can give you an old towel? So there was all of that going on. And kind of then I went into trying to fit into molds that made me more palatable for people. So, I thought, okay, well, if I just keep turning up in half men's clothes and half women's clothes and makeup, maybe I'm not going to get the career that I should be getting. And, and all of these kind of things that society superimposes on you. So I went through that kind of like period for a long, long time. And then kind of like, fast forward 30 years and I'm thinking, does it really matter? Does it really matter if I was wearing makeup today or if I was wearing, women's clothes, so to speak, in inverted commas, or, it doesn't. So, but all of going through all of those stages in becoming the person that you are in the end have an impact on how your brain develops and how you feel belonging in certain communities, how you might feel rejected by communities that you think that you are going to find belonging in, but then you find that they don't embrace you. And all of these kind of things that are important.
It's really interesting, this idea, either putting around masculinity around how you don't necessarily feel that anymore in terms of this particular stereotype that exists, but also this idea of kind of like isolation when you were younger. Can you connect with any of that, Mark?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. And like yourself, I really struggled to make friends in school. I wanted people to like me, but I just couldn't get an understanding as to why people didn't want to be friends with me. I wanted to be like the lads, but then they thought I was too gay. I got called gay in school, like, constantly, even because I hung around with girls quite a lot. So they'd be like, oh, you're definitely gay. And I think when I was younger, I was probably more camp than I am now. I think I feel like I've had to mask it growing up, because I think the trauma of being told that you're gay when you don't even know what that means has had a lasting effect on me as a person. Because at school, it was always gay, 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 gay. And I was like, no, I'm not gay. I don't even know what that is, you know. So I used to be a lot more feminine. I did wear makeup and stuff like that. And I think as I've got older, I've tried to mask that. I feel like I'm constantly masking, even with my autism, because they were struggling to diagnose me initially. They were like, oh, well, you can make eye contact and you seem quite confident. And I said, well, that's because I've been acting for a long time. They said, well, that explains it. You're incredibly a good masker. So I feel like I'm constantly playing different parts and different characters and disguising who I am when I don't really know who the real me is. Because I don't like being me. I like being other people. So that's like an escapism for me.
This episode is brought to you in support of Calm, the campaign against living miserably. Calm is a leading UK suicide prevention charity on a mission to help people end their misery, not their lives. We both do things differently. We both know we need to change the conversation around suicide, and that's why together we're both creating space to question the defaults that shape the way we think, feel, and talk about suicide and mental health. We're opening up conversations that remind people, whatever you are facing, you're not alone. Calm has loads of tools and resources available to anyone online to help you find the support that you need, including a life-saving helpline for people open every day from 5 p.m. to midnight, as well as vital online resources for anyone who needs them. So if you or someone you know needs to talk, please visit thecalmzone.net. Thank you for being part of this. And of course, today we may touch on conversations about suicide in this episode. Together, we can question the defaults that keep people silent, smash the stigma around suicide, and help build a world where no one has to face it alone. Thank you. I mean, we've talked about this. It's kind of like these effects that happen from our childhood and kind of keep progressing. And I think that does put people at greater risk, you know, when it comes to suicide, which we've talked about. Often I do think people think that this single moment, yes, a single moment might be the kind of that final point where people think about suicide, but there's a process leading up to that. You know, from your experience, have you learning around kind of ADHD and autism? What have you seen when it comes to that kind of point around isolation and community and that lack of?
Yeah. Well, the science is quite clear around neurodivergent people, whatever flavor they might have, whether it's autism, ADHD combined, you know, it tends to be like a spiky kind of a profile anyway. I don't think anybody has just got one condition. There tends to be a little bit of something else as well that might go undiagnosed. There tends to be some early life challenges, whether it's neglect or abuse, and it's not just because of the condition, but also because of the risks that neurodivergent people might get into because of maybe lack of social cues or, you know, the awareness that might make them a bit more innocent around certain situations that might be dangerous for other people, that might have that more of an awareness of those. A range of different things, but there is that link, whichever way you want to explain it, between a flavor of trauma, so to speak, in early life, and not just early life as in, you know, up to 8 or something, but then developing into teens as well, as there is also an overlap with sexuality. And there tend to be more LGBTQ plus people who are neurodivergent than straight people or heterosexual people. So there is that kind of intersection as well. And on all of those play a role in the person that you end up becoming. So by the time that you have an idea of who you might be, you have all of those imprints of potential rejection in communities that you think, okay, I'm going to come out as gay. I'm 16. I'm hoping I'm going to feel embraced by this community that I'm going into. And then you find out that you're too camp, or you're too feminine, or you don't dress jazzy enough to be kind of like with the in crowd, or you need to be more muscular. And then, because otherwise the muscle guys don't kind of think that you're part of that little clique. Or you might be not skinny, but not chubby, and then you're not quite a bear, so the bears don't embrace you because you are kind of like, you're not like bigger. So there's all of these kind of little niches and cliques within just that wider community that I think from the outside people think that it's just like a happy place and everybody kind of like loves each other.
Yeah, I did. Until I met you and learned about this. Like I thought it was this safe.
Yeah, and there's even place. Like, a thing about, trans, and not everybody in the LGBTQ plus community agrees with trans or like trans or, like queer and non-binary. And there's a lot of these kind of dynamics.
Yeah, putting people in boxes.
Yeah.
Like, because I've never felt like I'd fit into one particular category.
Likewise.
Yeah. So like, I'd go to the gay village thinking that I'm going to meet the love of my life, and it just never happening, and then getting consequently more pissed and stuff because I felt the rejection and that I didn't fit in and stuff like that. And I was like, it fueled to everything that I was feeling, so it was, I wasn't doing the best thing by going to the gay village on my own, but I wasn't in a good place at the time.
And I think it contributes to situations like you were saying about using and drinking and so on, because obviously you want to fit in and you feel that kind of inability to be part of that community that you want to belong to. And so you think, okay, well, maybe if I get off my face, then it's going to be easier to blend in. Right. Or maybe if I don't know, if I do whatever, if I get drunk every night, it's going to be easier to do that kind of thing. So there is that kind of like, again, another intersection in there. And then if you look at what the evidence is telling you, there are all of those overlaps. So you have a flavor of trauma, early life stress, developing through teens, through rejection and so on, trying to fit in, use of different drugs, recreational drugs. It's part of the culture as well. It's almost like, you want to be part of the in crowd. There's the clubbing scene and all this kind of stuff that rarely, you can be sober, like I am now, but, I wasn't for many years. So, there's all of this kind of, again, in a way, it's a bit of masking, don't you think? It's kind of like another way of masking your real self, because I think when you are off your face, you can feel a bit more popular because you can kind of be a bit more cheeky with people that maybe you wouldn't have the guts to go and talk to if you were sober. Like I wouldn't go clubbing sober because it's like, it'd be a completely different experience. But when I was off my face clubbing, I just thought I was amazing. And, I was talking to everybody.
Yeah.
So
it gives you that confidence. Well, that perceived thing of confidence, I felt like I could just go up and talk to anyone that I was the hero at the party, when I was just a bit of a sad case, really. The guy in the corner, is you're worrying about, is he okay?
And that's interesting because you're saying around this point around the, like, why the intersectionality of some of this, but also why people are at greater risk. Is the end point lower levels of resilience?
Potentially, yeah. I think I don't want to just attribute it all to rejection, but I think there is a drive for any human being to belong in a community. And I think not feeling that you fit in is going to make you want to try and fit in whichever way you can, whether it is by restricting what you eat so you can be thinner. Another intersection in there, eating disorders, disordered eating, and various different flavors of that. Particularly in males, it's less discussed than it is in women, but it happens, and it happens a lot in the LGBTQ plus community. Again, substance use, alcohol use. It's all a little bit of a passport to that community that you want to be part of, and you might not feel that you're good enough to be part of. Yeah,
and that constant, repetitive rejection of that can get us to a point where perhaps we may think about suicide. And what do you? Obviously, you've been in this space for a long time. Do you think there are clear gaps that as a society, as through government, for our school systems, education systems, workplace structures that we should be focusing on in terms of the intersectionality point that you keep mentioning? Like, what more could we be doing to understand how certain groups are disproportionately impacted when it comes to mental health and suicide risk?
I think it's just we need to work on awareness, first of all, because I think we have this idea of like wonderful diversity and inclusion, but then the moment that it goes away from certain tick boxes, then it kind of gets a little bit too, or is it politically correct to talk about this or not? Or is it a bit risque to talk about drugs in the workplace? Or, so I think talking about things without prejudice and just facing facts that are there and are actually reported in scientific literature, and they have been for many years, is important. And also trying to understand that people can think and behave in different ways that are absolutely valid. And rather than actually see a neurotypical way of thinking and processing of the world as the only valid way, any brain is going to be a little bit like a meadow. And we need to think about that as a meadow that is rich and colorful, as opposed to just think of ADHD, autism, intersections between that and being gay or trans or whatever it might be as weeds that need to be eradicated, or not as valuable as a proper plant with a flower. A weed is a plant and it has a flower. It may be less attractive than maybe a plant that you can go to a nursery and buy. But they may be really beautiful and valid as well.
See, I love this. I love it. But it still depends on the environment it's in, whether you see it as less or more attractive.
Exactly.
Than the other flowers.
Exactly. Yeah, because you could see a whole field full of weeds that are deep purple, and you think, what a beautiful field.
Yeah.
And acknowledge that as just for the sake of its sheer beauty, as opposed to just see that weed in another context where it stands out a little bit more, and you think, ooh, I wish I could just Photoshop it out. And I think that's what happens a lot. And then people don't feel that they can actually come clean about their sexuality or their way of thinking, their neurotype in a particular situation. And work is a typical place where people will mask those things.
Yeah. It's fascinating, this idea of the weeds and the meadow, that every flower has a potential within the right environments. And I sometimes think this with my own ADHD, that sat in a podcast studio and having really interesting conversations. I could do it for a long period of time. Like, I'm in the right space for me, if that makes sense. The constraint is far limited. I'm able to be vocal on the things that I want to, but I also look back at certain points in my life where I was constrained and I would have been more like a weed. The meadow was not looking promising, but I was around people and other environments that were right there. They were right where they were in terms of, who am I to say that? But it appeared like they were right in that environment. They were comfortable. I was not comfortable. And it meant that my symptoms were kind of on overdrive because I felt like I couldn't really flourish, going back to the flower point. But is it that when we think about ADHD and autism, that a large number of people are in the wrong meadow for where they spend their time, where they work, where they socialize? That actually their conditions therefore stand out as a result of being in the wrong environments? Or should we be focusing on the environments or the condition?
I think there is a bit of that. I mean, what do you think about this, Mark, from your point of view? Do you mold yourself according to the environment that you're in order to fit in, even now that you have the awareness that you're happily gay and you're happily autistic?
Yeah. But
do you still kind of like dumb down some of that depending on of where you are?
Completely, yeah. I change my personality depending on who I'm with. So if I need to be more confident, like I went to a social event on Thursday and I used to bloody hate socializing. I used to hate talking to people. I'd wait for people to come and talk to me, in the first instance. But I feel like on that day, I just went up and talked to anyone. I was masking. I was pretending to be confident because that's what I've come to realize is a lot of people are just pretending and acting. You see people as confident and stuff like that. But
then that depletes you in a way because you spend that whole day doing that. I mean, I think for me, it has been probably the last 5-6 years, a learning curve in terms of acknowledging that I have my needs and if I don't respect them, then I'm going to feel depleted.
Yeah.
So, like, for example, routine is quite important for me. And I always thought, oh, I'm just quite a creative character, happy-go-lucky. I can work anywhere. I can do whatever. But it's BS. It's not. So I need my routine of, I go for a walk in the morning with my dog. I come back. I need to do my exercise. Kind of like, organize my thinking while I'm out with Finn. And then I come back and while I'm exercising, I'm thinking of things that I need to do. And I crack on and I smash that part of the day. And if I have, like, for example, we've just had people doing things in the garden for a little bit and I had a few weeks of disruption, then that's been a cumulative effect to the point that I was getting angrier and angrier.
I see.
And my other half was basically saying, to the point the other day, he said, oh, have your meds stopped working now? Because you've just become, you're getting very angry. It's almost like the meds are not working anymore. And I had to say, look, that's actually quite hurtful, but, leave that alone. You need to understand that, my routine has been broken completely for not just one day, but for a few days, 6 weeks in total. So I was getting ready to explode. So this kind of like, I had couple of mini meltdowns where that's quite typically autistic as well. And I think if you realize of what you need, then you can be more protective of it. But I think it requires an effort of constant awareness as opposed to just say, oh, today I know that I need this, but because I'm going to prioritize this person's needs to mine, then I'm going to give in. And, so I'm going to make that concession. And you get away with doing that a couple of times. But the moment that you get into a routine of people pleasing, that becomes something that, again, you feel it in your body. Like I was tense. It is going back to the neuroscience of the body. My nervous system was in sympathetic overdrive, this kind of the part of the nervous system that drives your stress levels as opposed to the part of the nervous system that makes you relax and unwind. So I was just waking up with like a sore neck and I just felt like on edge all the time. So it's not just brain, it's body.
It's really interesting because this idea of, I know it's the garden and it is just a garden.
Yeah.
But it's the routine of that constant daily changing the system for something that you need. Regardless of it was the garden or some multiple other factors it could have been that you could have replaced the garden.
Yeah.
And that kind of mini outburst, I can really relate to that. And for me, I have to escape to water. I've known that for my whole life. And I used to become, I am still obsessive around being in water. And it sounds slightly off piece, but I know if I'm at those worst, I can feel those kind of mini meltdowns coming. It tends to be when my routine is wildly off, I just then need to be in water. And it's normally around like steam or heat. Or cold water. And I come out and I get a bit of perspective again. And I can then look at that kind of mini chaos like the garden or whatever it might be and be like, okay, I've had that. But I can now, I become like hooked that I need it, if that makes sense, whenever my routine is off. Which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. At least I know what I need, I guess, but at the same time,
I think it's good. You're acknowledging what you need and you're prioritizing that. And I think sometimes you just need to be a little bit selfish because most people, when, neurotypical people, when they know that something works for them, they are quite protective of that.
Yeah.
And yet again, neurodivergent people, we feel sorry that we kind of like saying, oh, I need this, but oh, don't worry, I can.
Yeah, that's what I feel.
Yeah, I can.
Like I'm more deserving of it. Like I therefore shouldn't say, and I should go without.
Yeah, exactly. So you're happy to put somebody ahead of you in terms of like, on top of you in terms of priorities. And I think sometimes you just need to be a little bit selfish to take care of number one, so you can then be the best version of yourself for other people as well. Because otherwise, like my husband was getting the impact of me being grumpy. Right. So if he had actually realized that I need to get my routine as part of my, my tick boxes of what works for me, then he would have got another version of me that would have been more pleasant. Or
you plan for the chaos, right? So you know that the chaos is going to be caused by the garden.
Yeah. So can you move to my office for 5 weeks or something? And at least I've got like a space to retreat.
Yeah. And they're small changes, aren't they? That can actually make our lives more meaningful.
Yeah.
Not meaningful, sorry. A bit more kind of calmer during chaos.
Yeah.
I want to go back, Mark, to a couple of things that we talked about. And I knew we were going to go on millions of tangents. It was absolutely fine for us to do so. And it's exactly why I planned it in this way. But at the same time, there was something you said at the beginning around that the lady who kind of saw something in you. And she, when you were kind of back then, that kind of put you on the more positive trajectory. And then I also wouldn't mind if you shared a bit more about Will, that these are two people who have had a big impact on your life during dark times for you and difficult times for you.
Yeah.
So if you take us back to who that person was who gave you that kind of pathway into kind of a positive direction, and then the role of this guy called Will, please.
Mm-hmm. So Sarah is an amazing lady. She's so lovely and so talented. And she saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. So I was so shy when I was younger. I wouldn't say boo to a goose. I mean, they even thought I might be deaf in school because I was just a bit like glazed over, maybe. I don't know. But I started I've always had a passion for performing and for entertaining people. I've always wanted to be the funny one, and my mum suggested that I should go to Oldham Theatre Workshop because it's quite a very famous, well-respected youth theatre. And I applied. I rang up, and they said, "Yeah, come along." So I was in this group of people my age, but I didn't want to speak to anybody. But I knew that I had this confidence within myself to perform. And I started doing more shows there and stuff and different show backs. And I got into knowing Sarah, and she saw something in me. She saw that I had a talent for something, and she nurtured that, and she pushed it, when I didn't always believe in myself. And even to this point, like, we're still in contact. We're actually making something. We're working on a theatre piece at the moment.
Amazing.
So she's always been there, and even in my darkest moments, she's been there. She's never left. When other people might have turned their back, who I thought that were my friends and stuff, she's always been there, regardless. And I wouldn't be an actor now without her. So,
because we never planned to speak about this, but it was the way that you smiled when you said her name earlier on. I didn't want to lose the thought, and I thought there was something in it. So you're still in touch today, and actually,
you're still in touch today. Yeah, we speak a lot. Yeah. So I don't know where my life would be without Sarah. I think it'd be in a completely different direction. So yeah.
Wow, it's a very powerful person in your life, and it sounds obviously made a huge difference in the trajectory that then your life went on. And I know this is difficult to choose not to. Can you take us back to the role that Will played in your life?
Yeah.
If you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So Will is another incredible person who I came about quite randomly because I wanted to get into drama school. So I messaged a few people, and he was one of the people that I messaged. And we never stopped talking from that moment. We didn't actually meet each other till about 6 years in. Now we speak every day on WhatsApp. He lives in London. I'm in Manchester, but we speak every day. And he's a dead funny guy. He's an actor as well. And it's difficult because when I was going through this, where I live, in Oldham, and he was in London and stuff. But when I went to Blackpool, I put a message on Facebook to say that I was leaving, saying goodbye to everybody. And he rung me up immediately when I was on the beach, and I was crying my eyes out, and I was, hungover and he was the one that was on the phone, talking me out of it. Like, you don't want to do this. You don't want to go into the sea. And he was like, Blackpool, it's a place to die, mate. So, and that made me laugh for the first time. I hadn't laughed in so long. And he sort of got me out of that tricky situation, and he doesn't judge me. He accepts me for who I am. We often take the piss out of each other. We've got that banter. He's just a really good friend to have, and other people should have a friend like Will. Yeah,
I feel like we need to meet Will. We need to
I'll bring him on.
Teach people to be like Will. I mean, so you shared a post online, and he rang you
Yeah.
straight away. What did he say in those
He's like,
calls?
what are you doing? I was like, I'm in Blackpool. He's like, why? I said, I want to kill myself. He's like, oh, mate, it's such a place to die, Blackpool. And he stayed on the phone with me. You know, I don't know where I'd be without him. In that moment, it was just like, he was like a godsend. Yeah, I'm always thankful to him for that moment, for saving my life, you know.
You just opened up to him? When he was asking you, what did he say? Like, to get you talking and to be
What
here
did he
talking
say?
now? Yeah.
Oh, God, I can't really remember, to be fair. I think we were just having a laugh. I think we were just laughing on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
He was like laying into me like he normally does, like taking the mick out of me. He was just being his usual self, but he was like, think of your family, think of your friends, think of me, what this is going to do to me and the after effects it's going to leave on your mum and dad and your sister and everyone like that. You know, it was a mixture of lightness and a serious conversation as well.
Okay.
You know, that sort of taught me around.
And it's amazing that he actually took action on what he saw online.
Yeah.
This was no joke. This was real, and he called and he was putting himself in that difficult situation in some ways, but he did just be his true self, like showed you that he's there. What were the steps that you then took after that to positively support your mental health and look after yourself?
That was obviously a real big moment in my life. I wasn't sure I was going to recover from it. My mum and dad picked me up from the police station in Blackpool. The police wanted to section me, but they could see that I was all right, you know, for want of a better word. So they just took me to the police station. They knew that I didn't have to go to hospital or whatever. Mum and dad picked me up, took me back to Oldham, and it's when I started the medication. So I went on sertraline, so I take that every single day, 200 milligrams. Sertraline every day, and started therapy through the support of my family and friends. Like, people realised that this is serious, and that everyone rallied around me. You know, I had so much support from different people, and you know, it's just I've always been passionate about my career as well, and I feel like at that moment it was going nowhere. I was going to end up in prison or dead. You know, it got to that point. And I've always had that drive and determination and that ambition. So doing the play and expressing what I went through was such a special moment as well. People come to see that. They were crying, they were laughing. Yeah. I think I'm so proud of that performance because it was real. It was really real. I mean, as actors, we strive to give a real, truthful performance, but I think in that moment, I really did give something authentic. I mean, I did it again recently on stage, and people said they still really enjoyed it, but you could tell, like, when you did it initially, you were sort of reliving it in that moment, you know, and that when you was on the beach crying out for help, and you did it recently, and it was like you were retelling the story.
How did you look after yourself playing you in that instance there?
Well, I didn't do very well at the beginning. I was a bit of a loose cannon. I was still drinking a lot. You know, I was drinking after shows. It was a really famous national treasure, I should say, come to watch the show in Manchester. An amazing lady, actress, and she could tell that I was drinking quite a lot. And she sent me this book in the post. She said, I really hope you don't mind me sending you this, but I think it might help you. And it was a book about sobriety. And I read that and it changed my life.
She sent you that from watching. You know her at that point?
Yeah, I knew her. Yeah.
She sent you that because she recognised something was...
She recognised the signs. Because apparently I had a big glass of wine in my hand after, and I was just down in it. You know, she could tell that I was a bit traumatised after that show. And I was just down in the alcohol. And she was worried about me. It was kind of a safeguarding thing, really. She sent me the book, and it changed my perspective on alcohol, because the way that I perceived it and the way that they told it in the book was like, the first 2 pints, you get that sort of buzz and you're like, oh yeah, it's great. And then when you have that third pint, that goes and your senses deaden and you're constantly chasing that high. And that was like a revelation for me, because I was like, I think that's why I moved on to the drugs. after the drinking was because, the drinking would sort of leave you a bit like that. And then you'd have the drugs and you'd have this concoction of like, I don't know, just feeling up,
What an amazing thing for her to do.
Yeah.
To notice that and then actually, again, take action on it. There's themes of those people in your life that have...
Yeah, she took action. She saw the show. She saw something in me. It's these people that have always seen something in me.
Yeah.
Even though I've struggled in my life, they've seen something and they've pursued that. And I'm thankful to those people. Even now, I'm constantly striving in my career. I have loads of people that support me because they see that I'm a good guy and that I've got something. Yeah. And I'm so grateful for that,
And you mentioned then, you said that you were drinking at the time. Does that infer that you've been on a journey with managing and moderating alcohol? Like what's that look like for you? We're in the hands of the gut brain guru. I
don't know about guru. Guru, I like that.
Scientist, I should say. I'm underplaying guru. I mean scientist, sorry.
I'm sober now. So I've been 2.5 years sober. And that's completely changed my life.
In what ways?
Oh, God, it's given me my confidence back again. I've realised who I am. It's helped me in my career. It's opened doors for me because I'm no longer that drunk guy in the corner, that's causing havoc. They could see the potential in me, and that I'm actually, because I've tortured myself through episodes of drinking and using. Yeah, I felt so about myself. Thinking, oh God, I've talked to that person, I've offended that person. And I don't have that anymore. Now I'm just on a mission to show the real me. And people are seeing that now. They're not seeing that person that I wasn't, even though, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. No, I'm following. Yeah, I was really thinking about the book you said around that kind of, almost like that doubt that's in your head when you drink. You're fresh-headed.
You're fresh-headed, yeah.
Yeah, it sounds obvious, doesn't it? But it does make such a big difference. I think I don't know. Do I struggle with alcohol? I seem to go through waves. It's interesting. We were talking earlier on around kind of eating as well. I think I go through waves on both. I'm never balanced on any of them. When I'm controlling them really well, everything goes to plan. But then I kind of justify it during periods of that time. But I don't know. It's amazing what you've been able to go on to do from 2.5 years of looking after your own mental health and focusing on alcohol. But from what you've researched, Dr. Miguel, why is it so important that we need to think about what goes into our body and then the impact on our mental health?
Well, if we just look at emotions, for example, if you just think in broad terms, you have more of a logical part of the brain, and we talk a lot about executive function in neurodivergence, ADHD, autism. If you master that executive function, if you must master that executive function to do things like planning and organizing and and all the rest of it that people just take for granted, who are neurotypical, but you are clouded by alcohol or by using, then that's never going to happen because you tend to promote more of this kind of emotional part of the brain, which is where you have some areas like the amygdala, for example, that triggers stress signals, but it also triggers very strong emotions. So it could be anger, it could be, again, if you're autistic, potentially meltdowns when you're drunk and you cannot control them because you may not be so aware of yourself while you saying potentially offending somebody by something that you've said, or getting angry with somebody, or getting into arguments, or so it could be a number of things that if you haven't got that element of muddying the waters from either alcohol or drugs, then you can just be the person you are without having to worry about that extra layer. So
do you relate to that? Yeah, Mark's smiling here and nodding.
Another thing that I was thinking about before, you were talking about will and humor as well, is how much a role humor plays in healing and in actually just chilling your nervous system so it becomes more resilient. It's not so much about having a calm nervous system that is all doing the rounds on social media, calm your nervous system. You don't want to have a calm nervous system because you need to wake up in the morning and go and do stuff and You cannot just be completely chill all day like a panda, but you can be resilient. So you can go from a peak of activity to doing nothing, and your nervous system kind of like goes with you. And humor allows you to do that, because instantly when you laugh, when somebody makes you laugh, it takes the drama out of a situation. So when your friend was like roasting you basically while you were thinking of ending your life, that takes the drama out of it immediately. And that's so, it touches me. I think that's the thing that makes me want to cry the most. Like, that laughter, I can see it. I can see you laughing on the beach and your friend kind of just telling you silly things, and you kind of like, just pissing yourself laughing on the beach, and just immediately you cannot think of anything, that you cannot think of something dramatic, because the drama is taken out by the humor. And we don't play that so much. I think, again, it's almost like we don't want to be too feminine, or we don't want to be too jazzy in the way we are dressed, because if we go for this job in a corporate client, they're not going to hire us because we are too, we're wearing nail varnish and we're a man or something, or again, we cannot be too smiley or too jokey or something. And I think that is part of the coping mechanisms that we develop, as particularly as neurodivergent people, to allow us to cope with life, allow us to thrive, to go away from like being that naughty weed that is growing in a corner there, like spoiling the garden, into the beautiful flower that we are. And we want to make people happy. We are people pleasers. And that is sometimes taken as a negative, but it can be a beautiful thing as well, to please people, to make them happy, to make them laugh. So if you have the ability to make people smile and to be genuinely funny, I think that's beautiful. But we just try to be so serious all the time. Everything is just like so contrived, and I think it's a bit of a shame, because we could have a nice balancing effect on our nervous system all the time if we allowed humor and playfulness to be part of our day-to-day life, as opposed to just want to manage it all to be so clean and tidy. Because life is not clean and tidy, it's messy. It's a hot mess sometimes.
Life is messy,
yeah.
Completely.
Yeah,
I completely agree. Like, humor saved me in my darkest moments, because depression drains the life from your soul. And when you see something funny, it just puts the light back in.
Yeah.
And that's why I love doing comedy, is because it makes me feel good. It makes other people feel good. And like I say, I am a massive people pleaser. So I want people to feel good.
It's reciprocal.
And having a friend who has the guts to, having that trust with a friend who's able to roast you and for you to find it funny. Not everybody has that. But I have it with a few, a handful of people that you can just be like, semi-nasty, but in a really funny way. And it's just hilarious. And it just takes the drama out of situations so much that I just love it.
It sounds like Will balanced that, didn't it? He knew he was able to do that, but also had that kind of the seriousness that was needed.
Absolutely. Exactly. And that's trust. That's when you think that, you can trust this person to just like, go over the borderline. So it's kind of like, ooh, that is a little bit, how do I take that? But at the same time, remind you of the important things. You were going to leave your family behind, and all of this really, poignant things that, make you think deeper into the situation. So I think, and that's trust with that person. You're building that trust bridge that I think is really important, again, in friendships.
It is really important. And I think the, humor in general, I find it hard to switch off. Like I wish I could. And I was speaking to my therapist before I knew about my ADHD, and he described my inability to default to childlike behaviors.
Yeah.
And I said, I can't not read or watch anything that is not real or serious. I physically can't do it. I'm better now, but I can't. Like, I have to always, everything has to be serious in my head. Everything has to be intensely purposeful and futuristic and driven. But I wish it wasn't like that. So I've had to it sounds ridiculous because I know how that's, it's natural for me to do that. But equally at the same time, humor's and comedy is one of the few windows where I do actually find myself switching off completely. And I don't know if this is a surprise. I don't have the research to back this up, but it appears to be a large number of comedians that we are in the public eye that are also talking about their ADHD and autism as well. And I don't know what this might be. There's maybe this ability to maybe people pleasing, ability to think on their feet, or the abstract thinking. There's probably multiple factors, but I can't help but not say a kind of a really powerful moment happened in my life. And it was after the sad passing of Caroline Flack, who died by suicide. And Joel Dommett, the, of course, very famous comedian, was doing a stand-up piece in support of Calm, actually, the charity that this podcast is in support of too. And it was called Comedy Against Living Miserably. And it was Joel Dommett, he shared, and this is also live in London, I think in the days after. It may have been the day after Caroline passed away, and Joel was a very good friend of Caroline Flack. And I remember the sheer strength it took for him to speak. You know, he's somebody who's very elegant, very together, can handle any stage and any camera on him. But he talked with such raw honesty around the way in which suicide impacted him. And I think, you know, comedy is a space for humor, but it's also a place for us to have serious conversations, right? Because you don't expect it there. Because it's supposed to be light-hearted and fun and switching off, but they've managed it so incredibly well. And I think, you know, I can see why you would love comedy. You're a natural kind of people. You're so easy to be around and very enjoyable to be around. But yeah, I think, how do we get more of those conversations into environments where people are, you know, I mean, creative.
It's a fine balance between trivializing something by making fun of it and actually putting you in a state that is conducive to learning things in a more light-hearted manner. And when you smile, when somebody makes you laugh, when somebody makes something funny, immediately you go from that sympathetic branch of your autonomic nervous system that drives stress and alert and puts you readiness for a fight or fleeing a situation to the parasympathetic drive, which is basically that branch of the nervous system that is activated when you relax, when you're winding down at the end of the day, when you're ready to digest a meal, when your cells are regenerating. It tends to be activated throughout the night, or when you're meditating, and, you know, which is a lot of people are talking about this kind of, you know, put your brain in parasympathetic mode. It's not just your brain, it's the vagus nerve that goes through your body all the way to, you know, to your adrenal glands, and there are branches of this parasympathetic nervous system throughout the upper body. So it's a body thing as well as a brain thing, but it relaxes you. And when you're relaxed, you're more prone to take something in a way that settles in the right bits of your brain, so you see things from a different angle. And a lot of this awareness that we're trying to cultivate, and in this meadow that we're talking about, is about making clear that there's no one perfect meadow. There's not a meadow that just needs to be completely full of rapeseed and yellow, or a meadow full of thistle and purple. A mix of different colors and, poppies and a bit of red, and whatever it is that you have in there is going to make it more of a varied ecosystem. And that's what we want. That's true diversity. So to open our minds to the fact that we think in different ways, we act in different ways. There's no right or wrong way to be or to think or to behave. Unless, of course, you want to kill somebody. That's probably not right, you know. So, but, you know, the basics of being human, you know, if you're respecting each other and you are able to convey those ideas in a light-hearted way that make people smile, as opposed to just like, you know, death by PowerPoint or being like very tidy in your delivery. I think that's it's challenging as well, because, you know, when I lecture and I've got like 20 students in front of me, I know if I'm very dry, I'm a bit bored, because I'm kind of like autistic brain. I'm listening to myself and thinking, God, I'm bored. If I try to be too, entertainment kind of, and too smiley, then I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm overdoing it. So it's kind of, it's just finding that balance that people are kind of like engaging, but you can see people nodding when there's a little bit more of a light atmosphere.
But what I struggle with is, this is amazing, right? I know you have so much knowledge within your brain, and I've watched videos that you've shared on this, and I know you have an amazing book coming out next year. So for me, I mean, I know you have so much wisdom and knowledge in your brain. But here's what I worry about, is that people don't have access to the knowledge that is actually going to help them change their day to day. And I think, you know, Mark, you've powerfully shared about your kind of journey, you know, over the years of, you know, amazing highs in what you've been able to share to help others, but also incredibly dark and difficult periods in your life. we're seeing a large number of people realizing or perhaps gaining diagnosis of their ADHD or autism or other neurodivergent conditions. There are, of course, very long waiting times that we see on the NHS. Some people are able to pay through that support. But here's my worry about the systems that young people are growing up in from the education system and not getting what you know to them. I can't help but think that when we have so much knowledge about how our mind and our gut are connected and what we know about the neurodivergent conditions that we're getting this, but there's not a forum for people to learn about it, that we're going to be having the same challenges. And I think it's something we have to question about how young people are gaining this knowledge. Would you think that's fair? Like, how should we be thinking about the lives of young people, given the fact that we actually know a lot now? Like, how can we?
Yeah, no, well, absolutely. I think it's just the fact that knowledge is not static; is moving, is fluid, and you set a curriculum for schools that might be wonderful for now, but then 5 years down the line, it doesn't cover enough mental health conditions, or it doesn't cover suicide. Now we're starting to talk about that in schools from next year. As wonderful, and the same thing about gender identity, all of these kind of things that they've always been there. Like, we didn't have the vocabulary to explain them. Like when I was 15 and I was drawn to wearing clothes. For me, they were not women's clothes or men's clothes. I just wanted to wear things that I could express myself with, and it was through makeup and clothes and whatever. There wasn't a language. There wasn't non-binary. There wasn't no, gender fluid. There was no that didn't exist.
The language,
So language evolves to capture those movements that are identity, they are culture, they are humans evolving, literally. And I think it will happen. Hopefully, I'm an optimist. I think as things evolve and as we evolve, just as we're starting to talk about suicide in schools from next year, there will be changes to the curriculum that will allow other areas of life to be discussed as well. Otherwise, because things are in constant motion, I think it's really important for voices to be broadcast, like, for example, like we're talking about now. And obviously for younger people to have access to these resources and to have access to books that talk about certain aspects of life that may not be covered in an encyclopedia or even on, in scientific databases or even on, Wikipedia or something, because it's just so new. Things are happening all the time. So it's just learning about developing things from people who have lived them. So lived experience plays a really massive role in that. So they can think, okay, I'm resonating with that. And then for academia to in a way, follow from lived experience, because academia is always a little bit behind. And I'm thinking, okay, well, there is enough casual evidence now to start funding a professor position on whatever, because we didn't have gender studies, for example, like 30 years ago, but now it's kind of it's an important subject. So just like that, neurodiversity will probably be a really important subject as well in not a long time in the future. So,
you're an optimist, which is great, and I hope that what you say.
I'm hoping that politics will allow that as well, because obviously, political directions in countries as well play a role in that, all, happening or not. But, I remain an optimist.
It's probably a different podcast altogether.
Yeah.
Talk about the future. But a really important time now, we have some recurring questions that we ask. You don't have to answer them. You can choose not to. You can choose to answer them in long form or short form. Most people is quick fire, but you have complete choice. What's one kind of societal default that you'd erase or completely rewrite if you could?
And there's no cookie cutter right or wrong way of doing things. And if we apply it to neurodiversity, for example, there's no the neurotypical way of doing things is no better than a neurodivergent way of doing things.
I love that. And that would change the world. It would change the world.
Yeah.
And for Mark?
How people perceive autism. So it's not, even when I was getting diagnosed, because it was Sarah who thought that I might be autistic, and I was like, no, I'm not autistic. And then I started doing some research on it, and I was like, yeah, I probably am. So people to have a better understanding of what they perceive autism to be. It's not all not making eye contact and rocking in the corner. It's a complete spectrum, and everyone's different. And we should have better understanding of that.
Okay, so I want to ask you a question now. So what's a belief that you used to hold about mental health or masculinity that you've completely let go of?
That not everyone has the shit together. I think we're in an age of the rise of social media and comparing ourselves to other people. I know that I do that a lot. And it has a massive effect on our mental health. People put out their highlights. I'm probably a bit too honest on my social media. I have people that keep an eye out for me and say probably shouldn't put that. You know, you should keep it positive and but you know, people, you might see someone get an amazing job, but then they're crying behind the phone. Do you know what I mean? Like, not everyone is just trying to survive, and not everyone has the shit together.
So what's something you've never or rarely said publicly on this topic that perhaps you feel ready to now? I'll keep that open to you both.
Nothing I feel like I've said. I feel like I've been quite open in my life and what I've experienced. Like I said before, maybe a bit too open. But that's who I am. I've done that to try and help people, to make people not feel as alone. I know for a fact that when the BBC interviewed me, it was like one of the most read on the page that day. And I got a message from a guy in Australia who had seen it and was like, I'm gay, I'm autistic as well, and you stopped me from taking my own life today.
Wow.
And that was like,
Powerful.
you know, give me all the accolades in the world for acting, but that is just an amazing thing. You know, it's something that I hold very dear. That
It's incredibly powerful. Thank you for sharing that. Dr Miguel, anything to add?
Yeah, I think something that I've started talking about recently, even though it's something that has been with me for probably 3 decades plus, which is disordered eating and how we use food as a way to feel safe and to regulate our emotions. And I don't know that it's talked about enough in neurodivergent circles. I think there's a big overlap between disordered eating and things like binge eating and controlling what you eat, going from binging to controlling to, you know, almost bulimic kind of behaviors, you know, all this kind of spectrum of disordered eating. And I think it should be discussed more, particularly going back to the intersections and specifically about gay men and body image. I think it's something that is, again, it's kind of like an elephant in the room, but nobody seems to be talking about the fact that there's a lot of disordered eating that goes along or many other behaviors that are, again, like Mark said, you're comparing yourself not only with people on social media, which is a driver for wanting to look a particular way, but to people who you see at the weekends in a particular bar or club, and you want to be more with them, more like them because you want to belong in that community, or you don't want to be rejected by a certain type of person because you're not muscular enough or you're not thin enough or whatever. So I'm going to give a little bit of a plug to my best mate's book, which is coming out soon.
Please.
His name is Daniel O'Shaughnessy, and his book is called Letting Go of Perfect, and it talks about these issues, body dysmorphia, particularly in gay men. So, yeah.
Great. Okay, brilliant. Okay, imagine it's 2035 or 2036. We have this episode again. What do you hope we're talking about? Or what do you worry we might be talking about?
I hope that we're talking about mental health more. I hope that there's more awareness. I hope that it's not such a taboo subject. I hope that more men speak out and feel like they can do. You know, it's still the biggest killer of men under the age of 50. It's a massive issue. And I want men to feel more comfortable. You know, I hope that society changes and that we're not, you know, also like man up, but I don't know if it'll change that much, but I'm hopeful that it will, you know. It needs to do. It
Needs to.
desperately needs to do.
For me, I think because I see things from my kind of like regular brain, but also my scientist brain, that we are just so much driven by data, and we talk about data all the time. AI, it's almost like, everything is changing so rapidly. But I worry that in 10 years' time, we may have all the data in the world. We may have 100 times more data, but we might still have the same attitudes towards situations that, again, so we have all of this new evidence or this huge amount of data to work with, but we're still trying to process it using the same attitudes that we have towards those issues today. Yeah. So it's not so much about the dough, or that will be the data, but about the cookie cutter. So can we change the cookie cutter in 2035 so it's a better shape that is more all-encompassing, more diverse, and is not so restrictive as it is today?
I love that way of putting it. I completely follow, because we're going to have so much knowledge and we have so much data available to us, but are we going to change our approaches to it? Which is fascinating, which is actually, you might want to build on this in the final question, which might seem really rogue why we ask it, but it does open up really interesting conversation, which is, we see a world of AI that we're now in, kind of that's not going to change. And we do ask each guest to reflect on what AI means to them, the future of their work, and perhaps their loved ones.
I guess I like AI. I think it's a wonderful learning tool. So I can see very many positives in it, and in terms of health, I think it's got huge potential. So I worried again that it might be used in ways that are just too much based on profit and trying to drive big organizations. So we end up with just a handful of companies that manage all of these massive amount of data, as opposed to have a wider variety of companies training those models. Because at the end of the day, if we end up with a situation where we only have 2 or 3 models that most people use are the most reliable, but they happen to be non-trans inclusive, non-LGBTQ in general inclusive, or not inclusive enough of neurodiversity in general as a concept, they may just give you, just tick box answers, but they may not get into the nuances and the intersections and all the rest of it that might actually give you the real perspective on what is affecting these communities. And again, I'm just using these examples, but I'm talking about people of color, you name it, ages, so if a particular model is trained in a particular way by a company with a hidden agenda, and that is the main model that people are using, that can be a bit dangerous. That's what worries me.
I wish we had more time. That is a separate podcast, I think. It's so true. And I think are people thinking about that enough? I don't know. I'm not so sure. But the potential's there. If it's managed in the right way. Mark, are you using AI?
I am using AI. Yeah. But, it's good for writing applications.
Right, definitely.
And stuff
dry
like
stuff. Yeah, it's wonderful.
Because I had to do an application for funding recently, and it's come in handy for that. Because I'm just not good at writing it down, it's useful for that. But I think in terms of like the acting world and actors, it'll never replace us. It'll never replace script writers, because you can spot it a mile off. I think AI is going to get better. It's going to get more sophisticated, but you can never beat that human raw connection.
Amazing. We've run over time. Dr. Miguel's going to be kicking me because I've made him late for his dinner.
That's fine.
But a massive thank you for you both coming on.
Thank you.
A conversation that was always going to go in multiple ways, but it was designed purely to do that. But hopefully sets up, future conversations with you both, and in future episodes, perhaps, if you'd be up for coming on. But a massive thank you for sharing, especially, Mark, on your kind of openness around your journey and what you've gone on to do. I think it really is I can see when you smile, it's very infectious in a great way, because you can see how much it kind of means to you and the people that have helped you do that, which I absolutely love. And just Dr. Miguel for bringing your real you to that with your kind of humor, but like high level of knowledge. It's exactly what I hoped it would be. So, and just a huge thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Really lovely to meet you as well.
Lovely to meet you as well.
Amazing. Thank you. What an inspiring duo. I wish we could bottle up Dr. Miguel's knowledge and bring it to more people in more creative ways. And as for Mark, a raw story, but one that teaches us so much. What stood out for me was the people in Mark's life. The people in Mark's life that gave him hope when he needed it most. It came unexpected to him in both moments. The lady who was able to put him onto a career pathway by just really connecting with Mark's true, authentic self. And of course, Will, calling at that time, seeing something online, and then using humor to spark a conversation at a time when Mark desperately needed human connection. And my heart does hurt when I think about the fact that Mark could not be here. He is someone that is genuine, authentic, and incredibly creative. Like, he has so much to give, so much to live for. And the fact that Mark got to that point in Blackpool where he was thinking about ending his own life, and it was down to Will calling, how different that could have been. And I think we need to do more to intercept suicide in that pathway to crisis. And of course, we've talked about that. It comes up in many episodes. But for me, how can we learn from these experiences where people are alive today to tell their story? And just a huge hats off and thank you for Mark for sharing that. As for Dr. Miguel, we knew that he was going to bring so much knowledge. But for me, what stood out was his knowledge around the brain and a kind of gut connection. I think there's so much that we're going to learn around how that impacts, especially a neurodivergent mind, and how we can actually start to teach that in more forums and more spaces, especially young people who are growing up with this knowledge, which for many people we just didn't have. So a huge thank you. The combination of both of their stories combining into one single narrative was interesting. It was the first time we had done that in that format, but I absolutely loved hearing from them both, and just a massive thank you. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.